Welcome to the Rock here in Pinetown, and we hope that you enjoy yourselves today and also learn something. And it's going to be a two-part series, and I've got it organized where I've got a gentleman at the back who's going to give me a 5-minute to go. Otherwise, I could be here for too long. So it's already been organized, so we mustn't worry about that. I want to speak about where we are and how we got here today. How we got here, and I'm not talking about how we arrived in this church, but how we got in this situation today, how the world has got into this situation today. And one of the visions that comes to light is obviously the vision of Ezekiel, and we have the Ezekiels War. And one thing that we can comfort ourselves is that God says that He knows the end from the beginning. I must admit, when I used to sit and watch a movie program, and my wife would say to me, "Oh, I know how this finishes." She knew the end from the beginning, and it was annoying. But when God knows the end from the beginning, it's good, because He knows the book. We think we're held down, that we're persecuted, that we're going through a tribulation. We think of all these things, but God knows if we get to the end of the book, you see how the victory will come through, and that's what is so important. Now, what I want to do is, how close are we? And how close are we to what we believe? We believe in the rapture, and we believe in the harpazo. That's the Greek word for being snatched away, being taken off this earth. And, we've had a few people who have gone. We've had Enoch. We've had Philip, who was transported. We've had Paul, who was taken up into the heavenlies. And of course, the greatest one of all, we've had Jesus. And when the rapture takes place, only one body is going to go up, and that's the body of Jesus Christ. And if we're in that body of Jesus Christ, we will be taken from wherever we are, whether we're alive or whether we're dead. Our salvation will be complete, because although our spirit and soul is saved, but our body will be redone in Him, in Christ Jesus. So what I want to do is to start off by Ezekiel's vision of war. And I'm going to read it from here. Ezekiel 38, verse 1. And the word of the Lord came to me, saying, Son of man, set your face towards Gog of the land of Magog. Let me interrupt here a second. We find Gog and Magog in the book of Ezekiel. We also find Gog and Magog in the book of Revelation. These were totally miles apart, because from Ezekiel right up to Jesus, you're looking at over 1,600 years. So Magog in the book of Ezekiel and the Magog in the book of Revelation, although it's the same terminology, because Gog is the ruler and Magog is the land. Now it's like the Antichrist. The Antichrist, John told us that the Antichrist was with us then, and we know that the Antichrist spirit is going to be with us in end times, and his spirit will be filled with satanic power. Here we have the spirit of the Antichrist, the Gog of the land of Magog, the prince of Rosh, Meshech, and Tubal, and prophesy against him. In verse 3, and say, and I will turn you about and put hooks into your jaws, and I will bring you out and all your army. Now that's amazing. I will bring you out and all your army. So God is the orchestrator. He's the one that's going to do all of these things. Now, it so happens that we go back to Noah. Noah was 1,000 years after Adam. And Noah was not a Hebrew. The first Hebrew was Abraham, who came 1,000 years after Noah. So Noah was not a Hebrew, but Noah was a righteous man. And God saw that he was a righteous man. And he told him that there was going to be a flood. And he told everybody that he's building an ark, and he's got to get, everybody must get on it who want to be saved. And the people, it hadn't even rained, and he's talking about a flood. So they just laughed and they scoffed. And it's like people today who say, you keep saying Jesus is coming back, and Jesus is on, don't give me that Jesus thing, and don't start about that again, because it just doesn't work. Well, I'm telling you, it certainly does work. We get this beautiful prophecy. Verse 5, these are all the countries that are going to go against Israel. Now, before I start reading these ones, some people say that there is also a war in Psalm 83 that will also attack Israel. The difference between that war and this war is that war has already happened. That war was the war in 1948, when the nations that were bordering Israel attacked them. As soon as Israel in 1948 declared themselves a nation, they were attacked the very next day. And they were attacked by their neighbors, by Egypt, by Syria, by Lebanon. But in this particular vision, we find that these countries are not bordering on Israel. This is a different war. Persia, Ethiopia, and Put, with all of them and their armor. Gomer, by the way, I'll explain to you just now what these mean. With all its troops. Beth Tamara, from the remote parts of the north, and with all its troops. So we're going to get an invasion from the north as well. And you will say, I will go against a land of unwalled villages. That's interesting, because all the villages were unwalled, were walled. Everything, it was protection. But they're going against villages unwalled. Why? Because there'll be peace in Israel. And Israel hasn't had peace for years. But quite recently, up to about 10 years ago, yes, they had their skirmishes and they had their rockets, tit for tat firing. But when I was in Israel, and when I was there, it was a safe place. 12 o'clock at night, dark, the lights were on with the shops. You could walk around. I remember coming down one of the roads, and it was the road to the Dome of the Rock, which also houses the Al-Aqsa Mosque. It's on the Temple Mount. Okay, and as I was coming down, it was a Friday afternoon, and that's when they have their main prayer session. And I didn't know that. I was walking down there with my little rucksack over my back and my shorts on, my little white knees like Biffo the Bear. And I was walking down, and there was hundreds of these, thousands of them coming and I thought, well, wherever I'm going, I'm late, because everybody else is coming back. And I didn't realize until I got to the very bottom, they were coming from their Friday prayer session. I must admit, I never got intimidated, or I was never spoken to abruptly the whole time that I was there. So here we get Noah. He's in the ark. How many animals went into the ark? We learn this as a child when we're in Sunday school, and we're always taught it wrong. And the animals went in 2 by 2. If you read your Bible, they didn't. The animals went in 7 by 7. The only ones that went in 2 by 2 were the animals that were unclean. The clean animals went in 7 by 7. We're going to look now at, he gets into the ark, and God gives him warning. He says, get into the ark 7 days. Warning. We're getting warnings now. We just look around and we can see the warnings that's coming all over this world. And we know that the warnings are coming, and we've got to try and tell as many people. And if we have got the same success rate as Noah, it's not very much, because he only had his 3 sons and their 3 wives that went along with him. The unwalled villages, peace in Israel. I will go against those who are at rest and live securely with no bars or gates. And Israel was so secure. I mean, this invasion on October the 7th took them by surprise. In fact, it took the whole world by surprise. And this is the prophecy where he says that they're living securely, and very securely they were. And yet withal, they were attacked. Verse 12, to take plunder and to take booty wealth. I'll come to that now. Sheba, Dedan, and Tarshish will say, have you come just for the plunder? Dedan and Tarshish and Sheba, they actually come from the United Arab Emirates, and that side. And they're not Iran. But we look, Noah's Ark, as you see, all right, out of the way again. This is Turkey, okay? All of this is Turkey. And here we have Mount Ararat, which is a whole mountain range. And here is where the ark ended up. It ended up here. Here's Mosul. There's the Tigris River. And here is where the ark ended up. And from there, the descendants of Noah went out and they started to replenish the earth and to breed. Now, the surrounding nations that we get are all over the place. We've got, all right, now we'll look at some of the names. We've got Put, which is Libya. Libya does not recognize Israel at this point in time. You get Chad. We've had Ethiopia is mentioned. Ethiopia was Cush, okay. The Sudan was Cush. It was all sort of, they didn't have borders. Libya was Put, and that's Libya. And Morocco was Put. And we also see that Tunisia was Put, and that's sort of here. Tunisia was Put. And these are the countries that are mentioned. Morocco was Put, and Armenia was Beth Togarmah. And that comes right up here. And here we have Israel and Jerusalem. And all of these countries, now we see there Magog. Magog was part of Turkey. And how we know that is because we look to see where the descendants came from. And if we look at Genesis chapter 9, we will see the table of nations. And I haven't wrote them all out. The table of nations, but I will tell you what they are. The table of nations is those nations of Put, Libya, Togarmah. All of these nations are the table of nations. There are 70 nations that were mentioned down, and that's the table of nations. In fact, the reason that they have the 70 is because 70 is perfection, and 7 is perfection, and 7 times 10 is perfection. The last feast that the Israelis have today is Sukkot, which is the very end one, and they sacrifice 70 bulls because they sacrifice the bulls for the nations so that the nations will be saved. So even now, they're still looking after us. Here's the wider nations that we've got. And these wider nations, you'll see that Sheba, Dedan, and Ezekiel is here around Saudi Arabia. It's not Iraq. It's not Iran. Iran was called Persia, as we discussed last week. Iran was called Persia until 1930. And over here, we've got the Put, which is not Egypt wasn't mentioned. And we've got from Egypt, then we've got Morocco, and we've got Tunisia. We've got Ethiopia down this side. And we've got Gomer. Gomer was one of the sons, Tubal, Meshach, and Togarmah, and Magog up here. And up here, you see where Russia is? We've got Rosh. Okay, so you can see this is the nations that are going to come against. Now, what's happening now at the moment is that this what's happening isn't the war of Ezekiel. It's not. What we have got at the moment is the catalyst to bring it there. At the moment, Hezbollah is coming from Lebanon. Hamas is coming from Gaza. These countries are right on the border of Israel. You've got the Houthis from Yemen. They're not part of it. You will find that as we get closer and as we come to the stage where the world, and I don't know if you watch the media, but the media is very, very biased. In fact, there was precision bombs let off yesterday by the Israeli airstrike, and they were precision bombs, which meant there was three, but yet when you saw the actual wreckages, it looked like the whole world was being destroyed. It's often that you will see starving children, you will see hurt children, and you will see children that are really crying and begging. A lot of those images come from Syria, not from Gaza. So you see the propaganda is playing a huge role. The Table of Nations in Genesis 10, from Japhites, we've got Gomer, Magog, Tubal, Meshach, sons of Gomer, Togarmah, Put, from the Hamites, from Ham. You can see he wasn't Jewish, because Ham's not a kosher name, is it? Hamites. You got Cush and you got Canaan, and then the son of Cush was Nimrod, and Nimrod was the guy who started the Tower of Babel. He was the one that ruled over Babylon so many years ago. So I want to carry on now to the economy. And this is one of the reasons that eventually they will invade. I'll be honest with you, Turkey and these other countries, Iraq especially, who are supplying the weaponry for Hamas and for Hezbollah, don't care about Hamas or Hezbollah. They just care about getting rid of Israel. Why? Because of the spirit of Gog and Magog, because of that spirit of the Antichrist wanting to get rid of where the Messiah was born and come from. They've even changed the name of Bethlehem. They still call it Bethlehem, but it's now it's in the West Bank. It's no longer in Israel. Russian stocks fell by 98%. Well, that's because of the war and what's going on. Turkish stocks halted twice on Friday, the 12th of March, and Iran's inflation rate is 36%. These countries are suffering, and the reason they're suffering is, apart from having sanctions put on them, it's costing them a fortune to keep these wars going. Israel, it's costing them a fortune as well to keep it going. But Israel is getting a lot of money coming in from America. But where they're losing out is they're having to use proper technicians that would normally be doing IT work. They have to do their reserve work. So therefore, they can't earn. The reservist doesn't get paid any money when he's with Israel. That's the wider nations where we looked at. Ezekiel's map. Right, now, to do this, chapter 36 is the restoration of the land. So he tells Ezekiel in chapter 36, I'm going to give you the restoration of the land. The land first. Now, this is what he did at the beginning with the Garden of Eden. He made the Garden of Eden before he put man in it. So he's going to restore the land. That's Ezekiel chapter 36. Chapter 37, a restoration of the people. And chapter 38, the enemy. And chapter 39, the cleanup. We will not get to chapter 39 today because the cleanup is in my view, is quite horrific. But first of all, let's have a look. Mark Twain, he wrote a book, and his book was called The Innocents Abroad. It was published in 1867. He said in it, he says, as he passed through it, he says, a desolate country whose soil is rich but is given wholly to weeds, a silent, mournful expanse. We never saw a human being on the whole route, hardly a tree or a shrub anywhere. Even the olive tree and the cactus, those fast friends of a worthless soil, had almost deserted the country. That's what his impression was as he passed through the Holy Land. Now, we know God said years before this, I'm going to restore it. I want to show you this. That is what Israel can produce today. That is a marketplace. It produces, it sells to all over the world. Apart from now, the sanctions are being put on it, but it sells all over the world. And you can see that Israel's harvest is, when God said he's going to restore the land, that's in Ezekiel 36. That's how he's going to restore the land. The next thing is, Israel, he said, God said to Ezekiel, can these bones live? And what bones was he talking about? Have a look at that. Holocaust. Those skinny little thin children and men and women. Can these bones live? He restores the people. So the first thing he does is restores the land. Then he restores the people. And the people then come through this, the Holocaust. Many died. They used to just heap them on trucks and dead bodies and bones and all the flies and everything around. But God is going to restore them again. He's going to bring those same people. He's going to restore them. And that's the reason why there's going to be an invasion. The reason is because there's going to be a gas pipeline. Did you come here for the booty? Did you come here for the money? Did you come here for the prosperity? Why are you invading? It's because of the prosperity. Israel, as you can see here, I will go back a little bit. This is Israel, okay, and this is the Lebanon. Now, Lebanon and Israel were arguing over who has the rights. But they've made a deal, and Israel already supplies natural gas to Egypt, natural gas to Jordan. And Israel has now planned this pipeline. It goes from the Levant Basin, which is where Israel off in the Mediterranean. It'll go to Cyprus. From Cyprus, the pipeline will go all the way through up to Greece. And from Greece, it will go then right up into Italy. Once it gets into Italy, it's into Europe. And that's how they're actually going to get the natural gas back again. Because at the moment, Russia is battling financially, and they're selling their oil, but they're selling it to India. They're selling it to China. But the big chunk that they were selling to the West just wasn't happening. Now, I want to read just something, and it's in Daniel chapter 10. And in Daniel chapter 10, we find that he says, do not be afraid. He says, because the king of the north and the king of the south, he says, I have got it under control. I have come to explain to you what will happen to your people in the future for the vision. While he was saying this to me, I bowed my face towards him, and again, the one who looked like a man touched me and gave me strength. He says, do not speak. Peace, be strong. And now, be strong. I'm telling you what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. Now, why is it going to happen? Because God has to bring his people back. He has to bring the Israelites back to worshiping him. They worship idols. They worship the idols of money. They worship the idols of material things. They do not accept Christ as their Messiah. And we do get the few who are the Messianic Jews who will do that. but God has said, this is what I'm going to do. He says, now, and understand this, from the time the word goes out on to restore and build Jerusalem, okay, this is now talking to Daniel. Now remember, Daniel is in Babylon. Until the anointed one, which would be Jesus, the ruler comes, there will be 7 sevens. 7, 7, Sheva, Sheva. 7 in Hebrew is Sheva. 7, 7. So instead of a weeks, which some Bibles have translated, it's years. 7, 7, 7 years. 7 times 7 is 49 years. And 62 sevens and 62 years. Why did he break it up like that? Why would he break it up like that? Well, the first 7 times 7, the 49 years, it was to build up the actual walls around the city. And then the next, up to the 62 weeks, or 62 weeks of years, if you like, will be when the Messiah is cut off and when he will be killed, when he will be, and they worked it out, it's to the exact day. After the 62 sevens, the anointed one will be put to death and will have nothing. The people of the ruler who will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary as the Romans did. The end will come like a flood. A war will continue until the end, and desolation has been decreed. He will confirm a covenant with many. Then he's going in to talk about the Antichrist. Now, the Antichrist, we needn't look out for the Antichrist. We need to look out for Christ, because that's going to happen. That's going to happen before this happens. And this is where it gets exciting, because this is going to happen very soon. In Luke 21, Jesus talks about that it's going to be like this until the end of the Gentiles. In other words, before the Gentiles will be trampling all over Luke 21, will be trampling all over the Temple Mount. And as you see, they are trampling over the Temple Mount, because it's the Muslims have got the religious authority over that area. Israel does not control the Temple Mount, and therefore Muslims are Gentiles. They're not Jewish. And he says, until the time when the Gentiles is fulfilled, the fulfillment of the Gentiles is coming very, very soon. I'm coming up to close to the end. Now, to supply Europe with natural gas, the Israeli government on Sunday, read it from here. The Israeli government on Sunday approved an agreement with European countries for the construction of a subsea pipeline that would supply Europe with natural gas from the Eastern Mediterranean, where we saw on the map. The East Med pipeline, which has been in planning for several years, is meant to transport gas from offshore Israel and Cyprus to Greece and on to Italy. Isn't it amazing how God knew that all of this was going to happen? I know the end from the beginning, he said. And with God, you don't really answer, do you? You don't argue. So it's going to be the restoration of the land that's been done. That land's been restored. Israel is now being restored. The people have been restored because they're living a good life, but they're not living a spiritual life. The next part is going to be the Spirit. How are they going to get the Spirit? How are they going to accept Christ? How are they going to say that blessed is he that comes in the name of Adonai? When? How? Through the tribulation. That's how. Through the tribulation. And then they will see the one whom they have pierced. And that's God's plan for Israel. 1 Thessalonians 5. You see, this is something where we must not worry. Because only twice in the Bible does it say, God say, you are my witnesses. Once is in Isaiah 43, verse 10. and also in the New Testament to the believers in Acts 1 verse 8. 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 9 through 15. For God has not appointed us to wrath. In other words, the tribulation period is for Israel to be brought back to understand and to know that God is God. Because at the end of the Ezekiel War, Ezekiel does not, the Israelites, the IDF, they do not win that war. But they do win the war. But they win the war through God and God alone. God will win that war for them. And then they will see who He is. For God has not appointed us, this is us as Christians, born-again believers, to wrath, but to obtain salvation by our Lord Jesus Christ, who died for us, whether we awake or asleep. In other words, whether you're alive or whether you're dead, you're going to live. And that's basically what I'd like to share with you today. There's the agreement. There's that pipeline, and there's the European guys as well as the Israeli guys and the Greeks and the Italians, and they're all there celebrating what is going to happen, and they're going to get the gas. Now, here's an interesting thing, and this is my last slide. This is my last slide, and the last slide is the pipeline to Europe. When? In 2 years. So if we're in 1920 or 2019, I'm still back in the old days. If we're in 2024, okay, in 2024, it says in pipeline in 2 years. But if you read it, and there is the link to it here, March the 8th, 2022. When was that? 2 years ago. Talks of a natural gas pipeline from Israel to Europe will be rekindled to provide the continent with an alternative to the Russian gas amid Putin's invasion of Ukraine. That came from the Chevron CEO. So we are on the brink. I'm telling you, I've never felt it so strong in my life that the rapture is just, well, if I don't finish the next sentence, you know I'm gone. But you know what I mean? The rapture is just around the corner, and we are going to be out of here. We're not called to suffer wrath. We are going to be the bride of Christ. There is only going to be one body going up, and that's the body of Christ Jesus, the body of His church, His true church, not just the denominations, not the building, but those who really believe in Christ Jesus, those who believe in His death and His burial and His resurrection. We will be called to be up there with Him, because the next war that's coming along is Armageddon. And Armageddon, it's in Hebrew, it's Har Megiddo. Har means mountain of Megiddo. Megiddo's a valley. And that's where the armies will meet, but the war will not take place there. The war will take place in the Kidron Valley, the valley of Jehoshaphat. We will come back with Jesus then. We will be on white horses riding behind Him, and we'll already be up there. We'll be in heaven 7 years. I mean, there's no point at the end of Armageddon us going up to heaven for 7 years if we're coming down again when the New Jerusalem comes down. We're going to be there. We're going to be coming to reign and rule with Jesus during His millennium period, His 1,000 years. God bless you. Thank you for watching.